You know, Dad, thanks to you, I was born in the early 2000s, around 2001, and that was probably, you know what, let me just say thank you, because that was probably the greatest generation of cars ever.
Yeah.
It was the release of the LS1, an absolutely legendary motor that GM came out with, that they introduced in the C5 Corvette.
You're not wrong.
And since the C5 Corvette, we have seen some of the greatest muscle cars from all manufacturers in the entire world. There's been such amazing cars since the early 2000s until like 2023. Such good cars have been produced, and it's so sad to see that in my life, in my generation, there was the best of cars and the worst of cars coming at a very quick time. We're going all EV here in a hurry, and it is sad to see that this is the end of muscle cars.
Yeah, the Camaro's officially not produced. Today we're checking out the 6th generation Camaro. We're gonna give some fun facts about not only the 1LE in today's video, but ultimately we have to pay tribute to a car that we can't let die. And welcome to Performance on Wheels. My name is Todd. My son Austin and I, we make all sorts of videos on all sorts of different cars. Today we check out the 6th generation Camaro, and it's especially important because if you guys love the Camaro as much as we do, we might have something up our sleeve in the very near future. So with some support by hitting that like and that subscribe button, you'll let us know if you're interested in what we're thinking.
Here it is, the 6th generation Chevy Camaro. Now, this car has never been all that appealing to me, to be completely honest with you here, Dad. And that is because of one reason and one reason only. The Corvette exists.
Well, Austin, that should really, the 6th generation should change your mind, because it's actually noted that the engineers were going for a Corvette with a back seat with the 6th gen over the 5th gen, and we'll get through some fun facts here, but just right up front, 200 pounds lighter, like 35, 40 horsepower more, bringing us into the 6th gen. So we're as close to the Corvette as we've ever been.
That is very impressive. And one of the things I've always really liked about the Camaro is, unlike German manufacturers that, you know, they have to have the one step above be faster than the step below type of thing. For example, there's no reason the E63 should be faster than the C63. The C63 is a better platform in every single way, right? Now, the Chevy engineers, they don't hold back with the Camaro. The Corvette is supposed to be the faster car, but the ZL1 1LE or the Z28, in every single way possible, was made to try to outperform the Corvette. And that's one of the things that I really like about this car. They did not hold back on any part of the development or manufacturing of it.
Austin, you are entirely right. They did not want to hold back, but they gave it to us in bite-sized pieces to keep us guessing, right? So the 6th generation comes out in 2016, and then in 2017 we see the ZL1, and it's not until 2018 that we see the ZL1 with the 1LE package. And speaking of the 1LE package, it's not new for the 6th gen, right? The 5th gen had a 1LE package, the 4th gen had a 1LE package, even the 3rd gen had a 1LE package, and what that is the track focus package. One other thing that is fun about the 6th generation Camaro is it was the first time engineers listening to the consumers that you could get that 1LE package in a V6. So it's different than the 1LE package that you get in the V8. For example, in that V6, you get all the SS suspension components. So it's not the same that what we're standing next to in the SS here, where we have the Magna Ride, more similar, that you'd find in that Corvette, right? There's also a few other differences with the difference of rear end, everything because of that extra horsepower. They are different cars, but it's fun that in the 6th gen, you can get the 1LE in a V6 as well as a V8.
Now, I'm glad you briefly touched on trims there, and I want to go through that quick because they can be kind of confusing to a new Camaro enthusiast. Now, you have the Camaro, right? The Camaro RS, that is the 4-cylinder Camaro. You have the Camaro SS, that's comparable to the Stingray Corvette with the naturally aspirated 6.2. The SS and the SS 1LE have the exact same power plant. You move up to the ZL1, you're now comparing it to the Corvette Z06 with the LT4. the ZL1 1LE, you're now comparing it to the Corvette Z06, Z07 package. So it's a little bit complicated how they have such different letters between these two makes and models.
Oh, yeah.
It actually is very complicated, to be completely honest with you. But just for quick reference, that's how it works. The Z07 like aero package on the Corvette is what the 1LE package is in a lot of ways on the Camaro.
And it doesn't end there, Austin. There are so many different, just small details that Chevy does from year to year. And there's no way to touch on all of them in this video, but you have to know that like the 6th gen up to 2019 has a different exhaust to it. After 2019, you get all the cracks and pops that you're very similar to my F-Type, by the way.
Very good sounding.
It sounds amazing. But there's like different noise cancellations. There's different paint colors that are from year to year. There are these subtle differences that they're adding from different years, and they're not always like advertised as you're researching. So you really have to dive into the details of the Camaro to understand what a lot of these small differences are.
Now back to what we were talking about just before that, why the Camaro exists, right? It's supposed to be a Corvette with back seats, a more practical Corvette, a more practical sports car. And this is where I've always had issues with it in reality, right? So you hop inside of the Camaro, it's pretty comfortable, right? It's a little easier to get into than a Corvette because it sits up off the ground a little bit harder. However, the visibility once you're sitting in there is unbelievably atrocious.
Right.
Like it's probably the worst out of any vehicle that's ever been produced. It is terrible, the visibility inside of this car. It's a cool feeling when you're in there, but actually trying to see out of that cool feeling is quite the challenge. And then you take it to the next step, right? This is supposed to be a practical Corvette. It has back seats now, right? So let's go ahead and push that passenger seat forward and hop in the rear, where we find that this is probably the most unpractical back seat out of any production car ever. I would rather sit in a Mustang's back seat for 10 hours than sit in this one for an hour. This is bad. Like, it's absolutely horrible. It is completely useless. Oh, well, I guess it should have a bigger trunk than a Corvette though, right? Let's pop the trunk. We find that it is very deep, but probably the most narrow, awkward opening ever. Like you can't fit a normal cooler in there or anything.
You're completely right. Like a Corvette is almost more practical when it comes to storage.
It literally is.
Right?
It is more comfortable in the driver's seat. It is more comfortable in the passenger seat. You have more footwell storage in the passenger seat. You have a way bigger trunk. You, in the C8, have a frunk. Like, it literally is more practical than the Camaro. And that's where I've always had an issue with it, because in reality, it is a better driving experience than the Camaro, and it's more practical, except for the fact that it has back seats.
Now, Austin, if the only thing you ever did was sat in the Camaro, you might lose interest because there is some awkwardness to sitting in it, right? But once you do fire up that 6.2 in the SS and start driving this thing around and feeling the steering feel, like your mind does change in a hurry. Now, in the 6th generation, when that MagnaRide was introduced and we lost 200 pounds, like I stated, we also lost 2 inches. So some of that practicality with the trunk, that's because of that. The car got a little bit shorter. Like, this became more of a focused track car in the 6th generation versus the 5th generation. But some will say, because of some of the computer additions put into the 6th generation, along with the MagnaRide, the 5th generation might actually deliver more of a raw feel.
And I'm glad you brought up that raw experience, that raw driving feeling, because that's not hidden here in the 6th generation Camaro. It is a raw feeling car. I love the steering feel in this car. It feels unbelievable. Good. The responsiveness is fantastic. You are connected directly to the road. You have great feedback, and the MagnaRide suspension is phenomenal. This car around corners grips like nothing else. It has some very aggressive tires on it. It is, the MagnaRide has a lot of adjustability through the drive modes, and it truly is an amazing track and autocross car. Like, it is so planted, it handles so well, it is very impressive, and it has a very manual feeling to it. It is still very driver oriented. It is not losing any connection because of computers. It still feels very realistic. Even though the 5th gen may be more raw, the 6th gen is a serious driver's car.
2019 is when we saw that final change in the 6th generation for the headlights, just like you see in the 2022 Camaro that we're presenting to you guys today. But since we're showing the 1LE, we should at least highlight some of those items. Black hood, pretty common. You know you have a 1LE when you see that black hood, right? And also that aggressive front splitter. There's some fun things before I talk about some other stuff, just to obviously comment on knowing how focused this Camaro is, not only on track, but performance. We obviously have some additional airflow for front end downforce, as well as just aerodynamics on the outside here. And if you move on to the inside of the grille and you really look in there, you can actually see a very large duct that's leaning or making its way back to cool those brakes, that goes onto the swoosh that's attached to that front control arm as well. And just massive openings on both the lower and upper grille, like no fake plastic. That's all just openness for the additional transmission, as well as obviously engine cooling that 1LE has. When you come around to the side, taking in those air inlets for those brakes, you will see those 6 piston specific 1LE front brakes. Now again, V6 difference, only 4 piston, take that in mind. But also, what else stands out to me after we replace the brakes on that C7 Grand Sport is those 2-piece rotors, like 14.6-inch rotors. The Camaro, because of its size and aerodynamics, is a little bit less braking capable than that Grand Sport. It's about a 10-foot difference from 60, 103 feet versus 91 feet, taking into account that Corvette is one of the best braking cars out there in the world, right? There's no denying that. But when you work your way to the back, we also have that electronic differential that has some additional cooling in the 1LE, but that's essentially directly from the Corvette into the Camaro as well.
Just a quick heads up, if you are going into this thinking that these brakes are cheap because they are steel rotors, check out the video up in the corner where we did a near $5,000 brake job on a C7 Grand Sport Corvette. Granted, this only has 2-piece rotors in the front, and the Corvette has them on all 4 corners. These rotors are not cheap. Just make sure your wallet is aware of that going into a purchase.
Austin, you can obviously tell with the Camaro's roofline that we're talking about track focus, because we have the little haunches here for those helmets inside, right?
Yeah, we got kind of that double bubble design that we saw back on that 1st generation Viper. We've seen that carried over through all types of different makes and models, just to increase that headroom for wearing a helmet on the inside. And I like how those body lines actually kind of sort of reflect that aggressive haunch that we have over the middle of the hood. So definitely a cool body line resemblance there. And can we just talk about how good this car looks here for a second?
It absolutely does. So this is in wild cherry paint, and if my memory is correct, 2020 until the death of the Camaro is when you can get the wild cherry color that you're seeing.
I mean, I'm a massive fan of the way this car sits right now. That black hood over that wild cherry paint, these, like, I don't know if you want to call these like satin gray wheels with those red Brembo calipers and the wing that matches the hood and the like smoked taillights. This thing looks amazing.
It really does.
It's a really, really good looking car. It looks super aggressive with the 1LE front splitter. Everything about this car looks absolutely fantastic. I'm a huge fan of the look.
Austin, we can't look at this car forever. Let's get in and go for a rip.
Let's do it.
The 6th generation Chevrolet Camaro, ladies and gentlemen. My goodness. Since when did the Camaro sound so unbelievably good on deceleration? Hit this corner here, so planted. What a great platform this is. I'm going to switch the Camaro into its comfort setting here, tour, just so we can go over the bumpiest road in town and experience how this thing rides. Ultimately, I'm not going to lie, it's a pretty comfortable ride. It's not too aggressive by any means at all. It goes over the bumps quite well. It's a very easy to drive car on a day-to-day basis when it comes to the ride quality. It's not too jarring, it's not too harsh. In its lowest suspension setting, it's pretty manageable. And my goodness, does it sound good when you roll through the gears, and it feels good too. This 6-speed manual transmission with rev matching downshift is definitely a lot of fun to play with, and it is pretty engaging. The clutch feels great, the shifter feels fantastic, and the steering feel is absolutely phenomenal. It stiffens up as you go through the modes, and in track it is fantastic. I mean, literally probably one of the best feeling cars I've ever driven when it comes to a steering feel, which is very impressive. I honestly think it feels better than the C7 Corvette when it comes to the responsiveness and the feedback that I get out of this car. It's just really such a good driver's car. I love playing around with these rev matching downshifts. Take a listen. It's just hilarious. I mean, I physically could never downshift like that, but it's fun listening to the engine rev itself up as you manually crank it through the gears. Makes you feel like a hero of some type, but it is genuinely impressive. You know, the newest generation of Mustang is out. The S650, I believe, is what we're on now. Very impressed at how much better the chassis and steering feel of the 6th generation Camaro is, even over the new Mustang. And I must admit, I absolutely love the 5.0, but something about the 6.2, just the heart of the 6.2, I like the response and feedback that it gives me over the 5.0. It just feels more responsive. And I actually drove a brand new Mustang a little bit earlier today, so it's kind of fun hopping out of that and hopping inside of this, because yeah, the tech in the new Mustang is a heck of a lot better. It feels way more modern, but this Camaro's got an analog feel to it, which just makes it feel better. And those shifts are absolutely fantastic. What a good car this is. I absolutely love doing that with the rev matching downshifts. And as we come into this corner here, the grip is so impressive to me in this car. What do you think about it, Dad?
It feels absolutely amazing, even from the passenger seat. Like, this is a performance car. You can feel it in the Recaro seats, which I actually thoroughly enjoyed, just the way they hug you. They are a very aggressive racing seat, right, from Recaro. One thing that's interesting over here on the passenger side is I can only recline it so far. Like, you can't lay down in the Recaro. It only goes back so far, which is kind of interesting to a certain degree, but it's kind of hard to lay down when you got the guy over here cramming gears. Fantastic car. There's a few things about it that always bugged me, just kind of the plainness of the interior, but at the same time, like, who really cares? You're not buying this thing for the interior. You're not buying it for some of the just things that annoy me with the different plastic touches that are in here. You're buying it for what Austin's experiencing over there, behind the wheel experience.
And I'm very, very impressed behind the wheel. The only thing that I would change in this car right here, right now, is I would want a short throw shifter in it. These throws are a little bit long. It's got a little bit of play, which most cars do from the factory, and that's okay. But I am just astonished at the steering feel of this car. It is fantastic. However, when I'm driving it around town and driving on the roads, one of the most annoying things about this car, and most annoying things about any car I've ever been in compared to this car, is the A-pillars. Like, holy crap, they're huge. I can't see anything.
Definitely
and the blind spots are absolutely atrocious. The Mustang is way easier to see out of. It's way easier to drive on a day-to-day basis. I'm more comfortable driving most high-end sports cars than I am confident driving this on the road, just because of how terrible the visibility is. Like, how did Chevy get it so wrong? They nailed the body lines on the outside, and that ultimately must have been just what they were going for, because it clearly wasn't visibility on the road. It is not good by any means at all. I mean, there's no reason the A-pillar should be, what is that, 5 inches wide? Let's talk about what it's like being behind the wheel of the Camaro. The flat bottom Alcantara wrap steering wheel in this 1LE is very, very good. It feels fantastic in the hand, and the shift knob feels great as well, also wrapped in Alcantara. And what I absolutely love about this Camaro is the heads-up display paired with this instrument cluster display. They are both vital for the information on this car when it comes to showing you everything that you'd want to see. They are fantastic. I love how we still have the analog gauges out on the sides, and we have the digital right in the center. That's personally the sweet spot for me. I hate the all digital, and I don't like when it's just analog. This is the sweet spot. It shows like everything that you could possibly want to see. A lot of fun performance stuff baked into there. It's a really, really well done display. When we hop over to the center, I'm not the biggest fan of that, but ultimately I just throw it on Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and call it a day. And we have physical climate control buttons, nothing through the screen, which is great to see as well. Ultimately, the main touch points of the Camaro are pretty good for the driver. Like, everything that you touch feels fantastic. Everything beyond that you don't touch feels cheap, and that's just kind of how it is.
One of my favorite cars of all time, at least it's like on the holy grail list of something I want in my garage at some point, is the, I believe it's 2015 Camaro Z28.
I believe it only came out in 2015, yes, which, if you're not aware, is the C6 Z06's LS7, a dry sump, and nothing else.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, like
they didn't even put air conditioning in some
no,
of them.
air conditioning was an option. It didn't come with carpet in the trunk. It had the carbon ceramic brakes that were released on the C6 ZR1.
There's
like strictly dedicated track car.
Yeah, there's something that's absolutely beautiful about the rawness of that. But I love the fact that although they give you some of the comfort features as the generations of Camaro and the years moved on, I must say that I do genuinely like the 6th gen Camaro. And the most important thing here is, ladies and gentlemen, like, we can't let these things go. Like, we got to take care of them, drive the heck out of them, and enjoy them while we can.
Here's my thing, and what I personally think would have kept the Camaro around. The Camaro and the Corvette were always like almost competitors. And it was weird, like they were from the same manufacturer, but they were competing with each other, right? Now the C7 and the 6th gen Camaro, they were selling at the same time. And for a lot of people, I think it was a hard pill to swallow that, you know, you buy an SS or you buy a Corvette Stinger, you buy a ZL1 or you buy a Z06. I think it was a hard pill to swallow for people to choose the Camaro over the Corvette, which kind of reflected in its sales when it came to the performance variants of the car. However, I think if the Camaro would have stuck around a little bit longer and we would have had that mid-engine Corvette versus the front-engine Camaro, I think sales might have taken a little bit of a swing. So I think simply, if Chevy would have came out with a 7th gen Camaro, I don't think this car would have gone away. I really don't. And it's sad to see that this happened to this car. It might have to do with emissions. I'm not entirely sure. But I truly do think if Chevy came out with another front-engine sports car and still kept that mid-engine Corvette, that it would be very successful. And it's sad to see this amazing legend die. And please, GM, do not replace this with an electric sedan, an electric SUV, or something stupid. Just either bury this into the ground or bring it back with a big old V8.
Thanks for tuning into the video today on Performance on Wheels. Again, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see you in the next video.